I was just a kid the first time I met the Easter Bunny, but what I saw that day still haunts me. I must have been 6, maybe 7. My family wasn't just religious, we were full throttle, Sunday best, never miss a holiday type people. Easter? That was like the Super Bowl in our house. And thinking back, even regular Sundays were treated like holy events. Honestly, half of my earliest memories involve hymns, pews, and the smell of incense. But this one memory, this one's different. It was Easter Sunday, and our church had pulled out all the stops. The service was long, longer than usual, and I remember sitting there, fidgeting, but not complaining. My parents raised me to love all of it. I really did. After the service, it was straight to CCD, our version of Sunday school. Some churches canceled class on big holidays, but not ours. Nope, we were still expected to shuffle downstairs and sit through another hour of Jesus-themed crafts and lessons. Business as usual. So, like always, my parents led me down to the classrooms in the basement and waved goodbye. Now let me paint the scene for you, because the layout mattered. The church sat on a slope, so even though the basement was technically below ground, there were entrances at both levels. You could walk in from the outside straight into the basement hallway if you wanted. That hallway stretched long and narrow, carpeted, dimly lit, lined with 7 or 8 classrooms, 3 on each side and a couple more near the end. My class was in one of the first rooms on the left. Way at the back of the hallway were the 2 bathrooms, boys on the right, girls on the left. And just past those was a thick, gray door that led outside. It was heavy and industrial looking. The kind of door that locked automatically the second it shut. We were always told never to go out that way, unless it was an emergency. If you did, you'd be locked out with no way back in. The entire lower level was decked out for Easter. Like over the top. Pastel streamers, cut-out lambs, construction paper crosses, Jesus smiling with cartoon kids. Some of the adults were even wearing those cheap bunny ears from the drugstore. I remember thinking it was actually more festive down there than upstairs during Mass. Everyone was in a good mood. Probably because we all knew there'd be candy and egg hunts later. I was supposed to wait until class was over to use the bathroom, but the service had been so long, I couldn't hold it. I raised my hand, asked to go, and the teacher waved me out. Nothing unusual. I slipped into the hallway alone. The boys' room was just a few steps away. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above. The air was still, quiet. I picked the last stall and shut the door. As I sat there, I could hear the faraway murmur of a teacher's voice echoing down the hallway. Just background noise. Comforting, even. Until I heard something else. A scraping sound. Not loud. Not clumsy. Just this slow, deliberate metal-on-metal noise coming from the stall next to mine. It wasn't the latch, and it didn't sound like someone shifting on the toilet. No. This was different. Uneven. Like something sharp being dragged down the inside of the stall door. I paused, mid-breath. I wasn't scared, not yet. I thought maybe another kid was just being weird. So I kept quiet, finished up, and stepped out to wash my hands. That's when I saw him. In the mirror. The stall next to mine eased open slowly, and out stepped a full-grown man in an Easter bunny costume. I froze. He didn't look like any mall bunny I'd seen. The suit sagged in odd places, like it hadn't been stuffed properly. The fur was dingy, more gray than white, and looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. One of the eyes on the mask had been stitched back on, crooked, like a lazy taxidermy job. The ears flopped forward, stiff at the base but limp at the tips. Still, I didn't panic. I mean, I was a little kid. In my mind, this was the Easter bunny, showing up in the bathroom to surprise me. So I smiled. I remember turning to face him, probably saying something like, "Hi there." He didn't respond. He just stood halfway out of the stall, head tilted slightly, staring at me through that crooked plastic eye. No movement. No sound. Just watching. It was quiet enough to hear the hum of the lights again. Then, after what felt like a full minute, He stepped all the way out into the middle of the room and raised his arm. Slowly. Pointed toward the door, like he wanted me to leave. And that's when he finally spoke. His voice was low, muffled through the suit. Almost distorted. But I remember every word. And if you want me to keep going into what he said and what happened next, just say the word. But tell me, do you ever wonder who's behind those costumes? And more importantly, who's watching your kids when they go to the bathroom alone? You think this is just a story, don't you? But check your mirror. Really look. Is anyone behind you? He looked right at me through that costume head and said, "You're the lucky chosen child. I have a gift for you, outside." And just like that I lit up. I didn't hesitate. Not even a second. I was genuinely thrilled, like I just won the golden ticket or something. My little brain never even questioned it. I mean, we were in a church, right? If something felt safe anywhere, it was here. My guard was completely down. I pushed open the big gray emergency door without a second thought. Didn't even register that it was supposed to stay locked. That we'd been warned about it. None of it crossed my mind. Behind me, the Easter Bunny followed without a word. His costume made soft, muffled sounds as he walked, fabric brushing, feet dragging just a little. I remember watching him out of the corner of my eye as he began leading me across the cracked pavement of the church parking lot. He walked slowly, guiding me toward a far corner of the lot where the building cast long shadows. There was a car tucked back there, half hidden behind the dumpster and a mess of leafless bushes. One of those older sedans with paint chipping on the bumper. It hadn't been there earlier. I would have noticed. I remember thinking it was weird he'd parked so far away. And weirder still, he didn't have a basket. No candy. No prize. Just a dirty old costume and this car in the dark. At some point along the walk, he took my hand. His glove felt damp. Heavy. I didn't pull away. We were almost halfway to the car when I froze. Because the passenger door opened. And another Easter Bunny stepped out. I blinked, completely lost. 2 Easter bunnies? My mind couldn't make sense of it. I looked from one to the other, back and forth, just standing there. That magical feeling I'd had earlier? Gone. It had flipped, almost violently, into something else, something cold and wrong. This wasn't fun anymore. This wasn't a game. And that's when it happened. Miss Carter, one of our teachers, had stepped outside. I don't know if she was setting up for the egg hunt or just getting fresh air. But she looked our way, saw me being led across the lot toward a strange car by 2 grown men in bunny suits, and she screamed. God, I'll never forget that sound. It wasn't a scared scream. It was that raw, gut-deep, mama bear panic kind of scream that cracks something open inside you. The man let go of my hand instantly. Didn't say a word. He just bolted for the car. And I, without thinking, ran full speed back toward Miss Carter. I threw myself into her arms. I didn't even look back until I was safe, wrapped in her coat, trembling. That's when I saw it. The car peeled out of the lot, tires shrieking on the pavement. And just before it vanished around the corner, I swear, I saw a face in the back window. A kid. Pressed against the glass. I told Miss Carter what I saw, but she didn't need convincing. She grabbed me and ran inside, shouting for help. Everything after that gets kind of blurry. A whirlwind of adults, police, questions. I did my best to describe the kid I thought I saw, just a flash, maybe 5 seconds. Dark hair. Pale. Quiet. The cops took it seriously. Everyone did. My parents were devastated. My mom cried the whole night after we got home. Dad wouldn't stop pacing. I think they realized how close I'd come to disappearing forever. But the police never found anything. No missing kids reported. No fingerprints. No evidence. Whoever those men were, they vanished without a T-miles. They think whoever it was had access to a key, maybe even knew the church. Had to. They knew where to park, when the kids would be alone, where that back door led. The whole thing was too planned. And that's what really eats at me. Because I'm almost certain there was a kid in that back seat. And I think that was their second try. Maybe I was supposed to be next. Years later, Easter still creeped me out, but not enough to skip a sleepover in the woods with my friends. I graduated high school just last year, and Easter still makes my skin crawl. But not for the reason you might think. See, my friends and I came up with our own version of an Easter egg hunt years ago. A darker, messed up version. A mix between manhunt and egg hunt. We called it the game. Nothing original, but we treated it like a ritual. 2 teams. One hides. One seeks. But the seekers are also guarding a stash of hidden eggs. If the hiding team finds all the eggs before the time's up, they win. If the seekers tag everyone first, they win. A couple silly rules to keep things fair. No camping near the eggs, no leaving the yard, but mostly it was chaos. Fast, fun, wild chaos. This all happened the Thursday before Easter. School was cancelled the next day, teacher workday or something, so we planned a full-blown sleepover. 6 of us, me, Ethan, Miles, Nate, Owen, and Leo. Everyone called him Leo, short for Leazy. No one used his first name anymore. Not even his teachers. Leo had the biggest house out of all of us, hands down. His place was in the middle of nowhere, giant yard, woods in the back, and more than enough room for a bunch of idiot teenagers to act like kids again. Plus, his parents were out of town until Friday night. Which meant, no rules. Just us. And something else watching from the trees. I lunged, expecting to tag my friend, but what I grabbed wasn't one of them. It was something else entirely. We were chilling in Leo's basement, just goofing off, playing games, when Nate got that look on his face. You know the one. Manhunts? He said with a smirk. We were all in. We rounded up every working flashlight we could find from Leo's garage, half of them barely holding a charge, and used Ethan's phone to randomize the teams. Fair game, no arguments. I got paired with Nate and Leo, which meant we were the seekers. Ethan and Owen were hiding. Leo's mom had a whole bin of plastic Easter eggs stored upstairs, so we grabbed a few for the game. It was just one of those dumb little traditions we'd invented, a cross between manhunt and Easter egg hunt. Simple rules. 2 teams, but the seekers also had to hide a handful of eggs around the woods and keep the hiders from finding them all. If the hiders captured every egg or stayed hidden long enough, they won. We knew the terrain. We'd played in those woods behind Leo's place 100 times before. The far edge was a fence line, the other borders marked by a shallow creek and a steep slope that dropped toward a horse pasture. Creepy at night, but familiar. The sun was already down, and twilight was bleeding into full darkness. We all set timers, 10 minutes for the hiders to disappear and for us to hide the eggs. When the countdown ended, the game was on. We split up immediately. I broke left, heading into the thickest part of the trees. Nate and Leo peeled off to the right. I kept my flashlight low, only flicking it on every few steps to make sure I wasn't going to eat dirt on a root or rock. I preferred relying on the moonlight anyway. Made things feel sneakier. Besides, if a hider caught a glimpse of a beam, they'd run. About 5 minutes in, I saw movement. Something shifted maybe 30 feet ahead. I froze. Thought maybe I was seeing things, but then I caught it again. A figure crouched low behind a tree. Still. Way too still. My first thought? Leo. That guy loved hiding close to the action, always figured no one would expect it. I figured he doubled back, maybe trying to mess with us. So I decided to return the favor. I dropped low and crept around through the underbrush, circling wide so I could sneak up from behind. My adrenaline was spiking, my grin growing. I got close, lunged forward, slapped a hand on the guy's shoulder, and shouted, "Gotcha!" But the second he turned around, every inch of me went cold. It wasn't Leo. It wasn't any of my friends. It was a grown man, face hollow, hair slicked back, eyes stretched wide like saucers. Wild eyes. Tweaked out, maybe? He smelled like rot and garbage, and his clothes were torn to hell. Like he'd been living in the dirt for weeks. I barely had time to process it before he slammed into me, knocking me flat onto the cold, damp ground. I hit hard, the air knocked from my lungs. Then his hands wrapped around my throat. And he squeezed. No words. No sounds. Just pressure. Hard. Unrelenting. I flailed, kicked, clawed at his wrists, but I couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. My vision started to blur, and in that moment, I honestly thought that was it. That this was how I'd go, choked to death in the woods by a stranger in the middle of a dumb game. But then, light. A flashlight beam bounced through the trees, growing closer, flickering wildly. One of my friends sprinting toward us. I saw the light hit the guy's back, and just like that, he let go. No hesitation. He jumped off me and vanished into the darkness, crashing through the brush like some feral animal. I couldn't even get up at first. Just laid there, sucking air, vision still dancing with black spots. A few seconds later, Nate reached me. Helped me sit up. His face was pale. I saw it, he said. All of it. I wanted to chase the guy. I really did. But Nate stopped me. You go after him, he said. You're walking into a trap. We ran instead, back to the house, lungs burning, hearts pounding. Nate called the others and told them to get back. No questions. Everyone came sprinting through the dark, flashlights bobbing like fireflies. When we were all finally back inside, doors locked, I told them everything. Nate backed it up. Everyone was shouting, talking over each other, trying to make sense of it. And then Owen said something that shut us all up. He said before the game even started, before the 10-minute countdown, he saw 2 people walking through the woods near his hiding spot. They weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were scouting, like they were waiting for something. Owen said he got pissed because he thought it was 2 seekers teaming up early, breaking the rules. But none of us had done that. Not me. Not Nate. Not Leo. We all looked at each other and shook our heads. That's when it hit us. There weren't just one. There were at least 3 strangers in the woods that night. One who attacked me, and 2 others moving through the trees before the game ever began. That realization hit like a brick to the chest. If I'd chased after that guy, if I'd followed him deeper into the dark, I might have run straight into them. An ambush. Nate may have saved my life. And suddenly, everything we thought we were doing, just playing a game, didn't feel like a game anymore. It felt like we were being hunted. I'm calling the cops, I said, still rubbing my throat. And this time, no one argued out. We both stopped at the same time, but not because of something we saw. It was what we heard. Right as I said we should turn back, Dylan stopped mid-step, and I did too, instinctively. No words were exchanged, but something about the silence between us changed in that moment. It was as if the forest itself had swallowed the sound around us whole. No birdsong. No rustling branches. Just stillness. It wasn't like we saw something ahead of us. It was something else. We heard it. A faint metallic clink. Then another. Almost like chains. But far off. Distant enough that I wasn't even sure I hadn't imagined it. Dylan tilted his head. Did you hear that? I nodded slowly, feeling that first prickling pulse of unease crawl up my neck. Let me rewind a bit. See, a week after that whole mess at Leo's, I was back in normal life mode. That's kind of how I work. Something horrible happens, and I just push forward. No sense in dwelling. That night in the woods, where some stranger tried to choke the life out of me? Yeah, it rattled me. But I moved on. Sort of. Then Easter rolled around again, and my family did what we always do. We packed up and drove out to Uncle Daniel's house. Middle of nowhere. Surrounded by trees. Big place. Real. Hunter's paradise. Vibe. I never fit in with that side of the family. They're all into mudding, archery, fishing, smoking meat, talking about deer season like it's religion. Me? I've got more Spotify playlists than hunting gear. But Dylan's always been the exception. A couple years older than me, chill, laid back. We kind of just gravitated toward each other during these visits by default. We got there late Friday night. I was wiped from the drive and crashed hard. The next morning, we hid out in the basement, playing pool. Not because we loved it, we both sucked, but it was better than sitting upstairs listening to second cousins bicker about farm equipment or local politics. No TV down there, so Dylan had music playing on his phone. Chill stuff. Lo-fi. We didn't say much until he brought up the woods behind the house. "You ever been out there?" he asked, leaning on the cue stick like it was a cane. I shook my head. "Not really my thing. They go on forever," he said. "There's this one spot where you can't hear anything. Not even wind. It's weird. Beautiful, though." I mostly nodded along. I didn't want to be rude, but nature talk bores the hell out of me. But Dylan? He was lit up like a kid telling ghost stories around a campfire. Somehow, still don't know how, he convinced me to go for a walk out there later that day. I guess I was just bored out of my skull. Or maybe I trusted him too much. We told Uncle Daniel before we left, and he gave us the usual, "Don't go too far and stay on the paths" speech. Dylan led the way, cutting across the backyard and disappearing into the tree line like he'd done it 100 times before. He probably had. The woods were dense, but not wild. There was a narrow natural trail, just worn down earth between thick clusters of trees and brush. Light filtered in through the canopy, dappled and fading the farther we went. It was peaceful, at first. After about 20 minutes I asked, "You sure we'll find our way back?" Dylan laughed and said, "Dude, I know these woods better than I know my own bedroom." I wasn't convinced. But I followed. And that's when we stopped. At the exact same time. Because that sound, the metallic clinking? It was back. This time, followed by something else. A deep, wet breath, not ours. Dylan looked at me, eyes wide. "That's not an animal." I didn't answer. Because suddenly, I wasn't so sure we were alone out there. We didn't stop walking because we saw something. We stopped because we heard something, and it sounded like someone was working on a ritual. Somewhere up ahead, echoing through the trees, we heard this deep, heavy thunk. Not just once, it kept happening. A pause. Then again. Then again. The rhythm was off, slow and deliberate. It didn't sound like a branch breaking or someone stumbling around. No. This was something intentional. The best way I can describe it, it sounded like a mallet slamming into a tree trunk. Like someone was hammering something into wood, one slow strike at a time. Dylan and I just stood there, listening. Eyes wide. Hearts racing, but not full panic. Not yet. He glanced over at me, clearly rattled but trying to play it cool. "Could be a hunter," he whispered. "They come out here sometimes." But he didn't believe it. Not really. And I could tell. The sound was just off. Eventually, it stopped. The woods went dead quiet again. Not even wind. I asked if we should turn around. Dylan shook his head. Now he was curious. I was too, to be honest. That was our mistake. We moved forward, quiet, careful. Every step felt heavier. A few minutes later, Dylan suddenly stuck his arm out across my chest, stopping me cold. I thought maybe he'd spotted someone, but he didn't point forward. He pointed up. I looked into the trees. And I swear, I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. But when it clicked, my stomach turned. 3 trees. 3 upside-down crosses. Each one nailed 15, maybe 20 feet above the ground. Way too high for anyone to reach without a ladder. And they weren't made from branches or rope. These looked built. Cut. Symmetrical. Fresh wood. Before we could even react, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. I spun around, fast, and that's when I saw him. A man. Just standing there. He was dressed in thick flannel, like a lumberjack. Full beard. Heavy boots. But the strangest thing was how still he was. Like a statue. And the way he looked at me? Cold. Focused. Like I wasn't a stranger. I was a problem. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and calm. Too calm. Dylan instinctively stepped in front of me, shielding me. "Sorry," he said quickly. "We're leaving." And we did. We turned and walked fast, but never ran. That guy just stood there, never moving. But I could feel his stare on my back the whole way. My hands were shaking. My legs too. I kept glancing behind us, terrified he was following. But there was no sound. No footsteps. No crackling branches. Just that impossible stillness. When we finally made it back to the house, the first thing we did was find Uncle Daniel and tell him everything. He listened without interrupting. And the second we described the man, I saw something shift in his face. He asked if we were sure we hadn't been followed. We said no. He didn't recognize the guy. Said he didn't match anyone who lived nearby. And Uncle Daniel? He knows everyone around here. Someone mentioned grabbing a few rifles and checking the woods, but Uncle Daniel shut it down fast. He said we weren't going to start a war over someone we didn't understand. We'd keep our distance. Stay inside. Keep the doors locked. Dylan and I went back down to the basement, tried to pretend everything was normal. But my head was spinning. I didn't sleep well that night. Laid down early just to escape the noise in my brain, but ended up waking up before anyone else. I checked my phone. 5:12 a.m. Outside, it was still mostly dark. That pre-dawn kind of dark where the sky's just starting to go gray. I knew I wasn't falling back asleep, so I slipped out of bed and wandered upstairs. Uncle Daniel has a study on the 3rd floor. Quiet. Bookshelves. One of those old wide windows that overlooks the entire backyard and into the woods beyond. As I passed it, something caught my eye. A flicker. Faint. Unnatural. I leaned in closer and realized it was coming from the edge of the woods. A small, flickering glow. Like firelight, but not big. Just a pulse. Like torches. I stared for maybe 30 seconds, trying to make sense of it. And then I saw them. 3 figures. Standing at the tree line. Motionless. Each one holding a small torch. They weren't walking. Weren't talking. Weren't moving. Just watching. Facing the house. Facing me. I stumbled backward from the window, nearly tripping over myself, heart hammering in my chest. I didn't even think. I ran straight to Uncle Daniel's room and shook him awake. I didn't have to explain twice. He was up, grabbing his rifle and pulling on pants, already storming out of the room before I'd finished describing what I saw. He stepped out onto the back deck and scanned the tree line. But they were gone. Whoever, or whatever, they were had already melted back into the forest. And then Uncle Daniel raised his rifle. And fired it. 3 times. Into the air. Boom. 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 It echoed through the hills like thunder. The whole house came alive. People yelling. Doors slamming open. Half the family thought we were under attack. That's how my Easter morning started. And I don't think I'll ever look at Easter the same again. I went looking for a vintage lamp to tie my living room together. What I found instead almost cost me my life. It was one of those rainy, nothing days. A dull Wednesday afternoon, gray skies, the kind of weather that makes your bones feel heavier than they should. I was scrolling through Craigslist, half out of boredom, half on the hunt for a lamp to finish off my living room. And that's when I saw it. Vintage. Gorgeous. A tall antique thing with stained glass panels and carved patterns around the base. Looked like something out of a museum, or at least an overpriced art store. But the price? Insanely low. Practically begging to be bought. I clicked it immediately. The seller said his name was Daniel. Said he was moving out of town fast and needed to sell it before the weekend. He gave me an address and said I could come that day to pick it up. That's where the first red flag should have waved. The address was in this old, mostly abandoned part of town. Nothing but shuttered warehouses and long-dead storefronts. But my brain went, probably just a storage unit. Nothing sketchy. So I grabbed my coat, threw on my boots, and headed out into the rain. The closer I got, the more I questioned what the hell I was doing. Every building was tagged up, boarded shut, falling apart. Streets were empty. No traffic. Just wet pavement and decay. I was halfway expecting to see a stray dog gnawing on a tire or something. When I pulled up to the address, I froze. It wasn't a storage unit. It was an old factory, big metal doors, rusted shut in places, windows shattered out like glass teeth. No lights, no signs of life. Just this dead building rotting from the inside out. And still, I went inside. I told myself, maybe he's just using it temporarily. Some guy down on his luck, selling his stuff before moving out. I pushed open the door. The hinge screamed. Inside, it was dark. The air smelled like mold and rainwater and something worse underneath, like old meat left to rot. My footsteps echoed against concrete. And then, from somewhere deeper in the shadows, a voice called out. "Back here! I've got the lamp." I paused. "Daniel?" "Yeah," he said. "Come on. This way." I followed. Down a narrow hallway that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in a decade. My shoes made this wet sticking sound against the floor. My chest was tight, but I pushed through it. At the end of the hall, I saw a flicker of light coming from a room on the right. Inside was the lamp, just like in the picture. Perfect condition. Glowing softly. And beside it, standing still, was Daniel. He was tall. Gaunt. Greasy hair slicked back, eyes just a little too wide. His clothes were wrinkled, damp-looking. Like he hadn't changed in a few days. There was something in the way he stared, too hard. Like he was trying to figure out what kind of person I was. "Here it is," he said, gesturing to the lamp. "Do you have the cash?" I nodded. Reached for my pocket. And that's when it changed. His face. His whole posture. His smile vanished, replaced with something flat. Cold. Before I could even blink, he lunged. He grabbed my arm and twisted it hard behind my back. The pain lit up like a fuse. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled. "Shut up," he snapped. His breath hit my neck, hot, sour. "Wallet. Phone. Now." My body went into full panic. I fumbled, trying to hand it all over, my fingers shaking uncontrollably. He snatched it and shoved me down. I hit the floor hard. My ribs lit up with pain. "Stay down," he hissed. "Don't move or I'll hurt you." I believed him. I didn't move. I just lay there, heart slamming against my ribs like a drum, as I heard him digging through my stuff. Muttering to himself, this weird stream of words I couldn't make out. Like he was arguing with someone who wasn't there. Then we both heard it. A noise from the hallway. Sharp. Fast. Daniel whipped around. And then, "Police! Don't move!" 2 officers burst through the doorway, weapons drawn. The room exploded into motion. Daniel tried to bolt, but they were already on him, slammed him down, cuffed him. He screamed once, then went silent. I just stayed on the ground, too stunned to even sit up. One of the officers crouched next to me. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded weakly. How did you find me?" I stammered. "We've been watching this area," he said. "A bunch of robberies. People lured in through Craigslist. You were lucky we saw you go in." They helped me out. Back through the rain. Back to the real world. As I walked past that lamp on the way out, I looked at it one last time. Still glowing, untouched. Beautiful. Almost too beautiful. At the station, I gave my full statement. They returned my wallet and phone. Somehow, either was stolen or broken. But as I drove home, I couldn't stop shaking. All that for a lamp? And now, every time I scroll through Craigslist, I wonder if someone else is out there, waiting. Holding something beautiful. In a place no one would ever go. You think I'm lucky. But maybe they just weren't ready to take me yet. The woman claimed she was too sick to drive, but when my parents arrived at her place, it was obvious the real sickness was something else entirely. My mom and stepdad live out in the sticks, real countryside. Cows, horses, dirt roads, old barns, the whole deal. They've been on that ranch for decades now, quiet and happy in their own little bubble of routine. But even that kind of peace can get interrupted. It all started when they finally decided it was time to retire their beat-up old Ford work truck. It had served them for years, but repairs were getting out of hand. So, they bought a shiny new one and put the old Ford up for sale. Didn't take long before someone reached out. It was this woman from about 4 hours away. Said she lived rural, said she was interested, but right away started with excuses. Claimed she couldn't drive because of health issues. Said it'd mean the world if they could bring the truck straight to her. My mom. Red flags everywhere. But my stepdad, he's the generous to a fault type. Thought it'd be a simple, kind gesture. Just help out some woman in need. So against my mom's better judgment, they loaded into the new truck and made the drive. It took nearly 5 hours, winding through empty roads, dense tree lines, and stretches of gravel where the GPS barely worked. And when they got there, the place was off. Set way back off the road, surrounded by overgrown brush and dead trees. The kind of property you only find by accident, or because you were meant to. It looked half abandoned. The gate hung loose. Paint peeled off the front porch like old skin. Then the woman appeared. She didn't look sick. Not even close. Walked right up to the gate, waving like nothing was wrong. And from the minute she opened her mouth, it was all weird. Talked in circles. Said something about her bank messing up, and how she couldn't pay today. Only had a post-dated check, dated for the following week. Said she needed the truck now. Also asked if they could leave the plates on it, still registered in my stepdad's name. That was it for my mom. She pulled my stepdad aside and gave him the look. Whisper yelled at him, saying there was no way in hell they were leaving that truck here with some half-baked check. He caved on the plates, agreed to remove them, but still handed over the keys. He just wanted the deal done. They made the long drive home. Tense. Quiet. Uncertain. And of course, the check bounced. Hard. My mom had seen it coming. My stepdad tried calling, but the woman ghosted them for weeks. Dodged every call. Every message. When she finally did answer, she claimed she'd been hospitalized. Went on, spinning news stories, none of them believable. That's when my stepdad finally snapped. Told her they were coming back. With a trailer. And this time, they weren't asking. They loaded up and made the trip again that weekend. But this time? Something was different. The sky was darker than it should have been. Clouds hung low and heavy. Wind started to pick up the closer they got. The whole drive felt wrong. When they pulled into the property, it looked like no one had lived there in weeks. The gate was open, swaying in the wind. The house was silent. My parents knocked. No answer. But tucked away behind the house, hidden inside a dust-covered shed, was the old Ford. Paint scratched, one headlight cracked, some weird dents across the bumper. But it still ran. My stepdad wasted no time. He got it onto the trailer and strapped it down, constantly glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone, or something, to jump out of the trees. My mom, on the other hand, was furious. She wrote out a short, sharp note. Something like thanks for nothing, and shoved it under the woman's door. 15 minutes into their drive home, just as the woods were getting thick again, my mom's phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up, hesitant, and was immediately met with screaming. It was her. The woman. Raging. Said she was going to call the RCMP. Said she was reporting harassment. My mom didn't even blink. Told her flat out. You'd have to explain your fraud first. Click. Dead air. Relieved but still rattled, they kept driving. The storm behind them was catching up fast. Wind howled through the trees, and dead branches littered the road ahead. That's when things got worse. A pair of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. At first, distant. But then they started gaining. Fast. Too fast. The vehicle looked old. Black. Boxy. The kind of truck that shouldn't be able to move that quick. My stepdad sped up. The black truck matched him, then swerved violently. Got so close they could see the driver's face was completely hidden in shadow. High beams flashed. Horn blared. Then, the truck flew past them, cutting in so close the trailer nearly swerved off the road. My stepdad slammed the brakes, hands locked on the wheel. The black truck skidded to a stop ahead of them, blocking the road. For a few long seconds, everything went still. Then the black truck slowly rolled forward again, and disappeared into the fog. The day I met my new roommate, I felt something was off, but I didn't realize just how bad it would get until I caught her trying on my clothes in the mirror. I needed a roommate. Fast. Rent in San Diego isn't exactly forgiving, and I didn't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect fit. So when I found this girl from Florida who said she was relocating and needed a place ASAP, I said yes without asking enough questions. Big mistake. She seemed harmless enough at first, kind of ditzy, a little too talkative over the phone, but in person? Just plain weird. Like, no concept of boundaries weird. First week, and she was already eating my food without asking. Not just a slice of bread here and there, whole meals. Stuff I'd labeled. My leftovers, my snacks, all gone. She'd barge into my room unannounced, even when I had friends over, and say the strangest, most random crap. Just to be part of the conversation, like she couldn't stand not being included. But it didn't stop at awkwardness. She'd knock on the bathroom door constantly while I was in there. Not emergencies. Just asking things like, "Hey, do you know where my lip gloss is?" Or, "Do you think dolphins dream?" No joke. One day, I came home early and caught her in my room, trying on my clothes, stuff I hadn't even worn yet. I just stood there stunned. She looked at me like I was the weird one. "Oh," she said casually. "I figured we'd just share, like sisters." No. Nope. I told her firmly that it wasn't okay, that she had to respect my space and stuff. She nodded, fake apologetic, and nothing changed. It got worse when she started bringing people over. Every other night, she'd invite her coworker from Subway. No big deal, until the boyfriend showed up. Recently released from jail. Brought friends with him. Shady friends. Guys who didn't smile. Guys who stared at my things just a little too long. They didn't come over to hang out. They came over to scope the place out. Meanwhile, my roommate? Thrilled. Finally had cool friends. She'd sit there giggling at her own weird stories while these dudes laughed along, barely pretending to listen. I watched them whisper to each other when she mentioned that she always leaves the window cracked just in case I forget my keys. She thought it was clever. I thought it was an invitation. I told her, repeatedly, not to do that. I explained in detail how unsafe that was. She laughed me off every time. "Nobody's gonna crawl into our apartment," she'd say. "They'd have to be Cleo-y." She had no idea what kind of people she was letting in. Then came the day I'll never forget. I got home from work. Exhausted. Ready to flop on the couch and shut out the world. But when I walked in, the world shattered. The place was wrecked. Drawers yanked out. Cabinets emptied. My bedroom had been torn apart. My big TV? Gone. My laptop? Gone. Even my glasses, my damn prescription glasses, gone. They took everything. They even took the wedding dress my aunt had trusted me with, asked me to sell it for her online. It wasn't just a robbery. It was surgical. They knew what they wanted. My stomach dropped. I already knew who did it. It wasn't a random break-in. These people had been inside. They'd cased the place. They knew me. They watched me. I called my roommate, hands shaking, voice full of fury. And you know what she said? She said she had just gotten home. Said she'd already called the police on me. Claimed I'd set it all up. Said her busted old laptop was missing and accused me of faking a robbery to get rid of her junk. I was so stunned, I didn't even know how to respond. The police arrived soon after. I was already outside, pacing, breathing hard, ready to explode. When they stepped inside, I lost it. Started yelling, pointing a finger in her face. Inches away. She backed into the wall, suddenly quiet, eyes wide like a scared little kid. But I wasn't done. The cops separated us and took statements. They didn't arrest anyone, not that day. Said they'd investigate. But I could tell they didn't believe either of us. Just two roommates pointing fingers, both looking a little too desperate. She moved out a week later. Took what little she had left, vanished without a word. No apology. No explanation. A month passed. Then two. The building felt colder after that. Quieter. But I still kept every door locked, every window bolted. I bought new blinds and never left them open. I thought it was over. Until I came home late one night and found a single thing sitting on my kitchen counter. My old prescription glasses. The ones they took. No note. No prints. Just the glasses, cleaned and folded neatly, lenses facing up toward the ceiling light. Like a gift. Or a warning. I haven't seen her since. But some nights, I swear I hear someone knock. Twice. Then nothing.